Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has officially launched a civil and criminal investigation into one of the largest corporations in the world and the largest tourist attraction in Florida, Disney. I'm Dina Sayegh Doll. I'm a corporate lawyer, and I'm going to talk today about the weaponization of government by Ron DeSantis. Now, he's doing this because they outmaneuvered him, they outsmarted him with respect to the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Ron DeSantis sent a letter asking for this official investigation to his chief inspector general and the Department of Law Enforcement in Florida. I'm going to read you a little bit of that letter, and then I'm going to get into why I think that he's not going to be successful and a little bit of background on this special district. What he says in his letter is that the actions of this special district Reedy Creek Improvement Board was collusive and self-dealing, that they did this to nullify the will of the people and the legislation that was passed. He specifically says it appears to suffer from several legal infirmities. Now, before I go into those legal infirmities and what I think of each of them, let me just give you a little bit of background on this. In 1967, Florida established a special tax district called the Reedy Creek Improvement District. This was meant to govern the 25,000-acre land that Disney sits on. Now, essentially, this functioned for years. But when Disney criticized Ron DeSantis's Don't Say Gay bill, and when they decided to stop funding political contributions in Florida, Ron DeSantis decided he wanted to do away with this tax district. He essentially was punishing Disney for freedom of speech in the criticism, and freedom of speech in how you want to donate money. Citizens United, campaign money is speech. So he was trying to punish them for their freedom of speech, and he wanted to do away completely with a special tax district, but decided he couldn't politically do that because it would actually raise the taxes of Floridans by because they would have to pay for fire department, they would have to pay for the police, and there was this tax bond out there that they would incur money over also. So he pivoted. Okay, this was his first pivot because all of his bluster, he realized he couldn't get done what he wanted to get done. So his first pivot was deciding, okay, instead of eliminating the special tax board, I'm going to nominate the 5 members of the board. Because prior to this, and all along since 1967, the board was supposed to be appointed by the majority landowner, which was Disney. And so Disney for years and years appointed the 5-member board. But Ron DeSantis decided he wanted to appoint the 5-member board. He said he wanted to do this. Really, he was vocal about it. He wanted to control the content, the entertainment that Disney put out. He thought if he could control the development of what Disney could and couldn't build on this 25,000 acres, he could essentially control the company. That's what Ron DeSantis wanted to do. He wanted to control this huge multinational corporation. Right there, that's an overstep of the government. Now his new investigation is clearly a weaponization of his authority as governor. So, but just prior to his new board taking over, the old Reedy Creek board had a publicly held meeting, a few publicly held meetings that they publicly noticed, where they put together a development agreement allowing Disney to have control over the development, not the Reedy Creek board, but Disney. And they also entered into a restrictive covenant saying that the Reedy Creek Improvement District couldn't do anything with the Disney name. So Ron DeSantis, upset that Disney outmaneuvered him, is now launching this investigation. And in his letter, he says a few very specific things that he said that Disney did wrong. So let's go through those. He said that 1, that there was inadequate notice. 2, that there was a lack of consideration. 3, there was an improper delegation of authority. 4, there were ethical violations, such as a conflict of interest and self-dealing. Now, let's take them each one by one. The inadequate notice, that is going to fail. They published notices in the local papers. It looks like they kind of dotted their I's and crossed their T's. Definitely public notices. They discussed this in public meetings. So they seem to have followed the procedure there. Lack of consideration. Okay, this is an interesting one. Essentially, any contract has to have two things. One, it has to be in writing, and two, there has to be consideration. If I'm going to buy your house, I have to at least pay you $1. Otherwise, we consider there to be no consideration for the contract, and so therefore it's null and void. So basically, he's trying to say that the development agreement should have had consideration, that Reedy Creek needed to, or that Disney needed to give Reedy Creek some sort of money or something in order for that to be a valid contract. But the reason why this doesn't make sense is because Reedy Creek isn't like a separate business corporation that they used to have the rights and now they're giving the rights over to Disney, in which there would need to be some sort of consideration. Reedy Creek was a governing body, and governing bodies have the right to change their terms of governance all the time. A board of directors of a corporation gets to change the bylaws of the corporation or how, the company gets run, essentially. And that is what the board here did. The Reedy Creek Improvement Board was essentially changing how the board is run, how the company is run. And instead of them deciding whether or not to do a development, they said Disney is going to decide to do the development. But that seems well within their rights as a board, and it's not a contract. It wasn't a contract so much as a change in their governance. So I think that will fail. And then their improper delegation of authority. Again, as a board, you can make decisions like that. You can decide how a company is going to be run. That's well within their authority as a board is corporate governance. And I believe that's what this is here, is corporate governance. And then in terms of conflicts of interest and self-dealing, this is what I thought. They were going to claim that there was some sort of fiduciary duty on the part of the board that they didn't do. The reason why this is going to fail is because, one, self-dealing. It's not Disney that was on the board and decided to give Disney the rights of development. Yes, they were appointed by Disney, but they were separate people. And that's why this self-dealing will not stand, because they were validly appointed members of the board. If the board didn't want to have the majority landowner decide, whether or not to appoint the board, then they could change it, which Ron DeSantis eventually did. But while they were still controlling it, they could, again, decide corporate governance issues. So it wasn't Disney that changed it. It was just their appointees, and they were validly appointed, and they had adequate notice, and it looks like they legally changed it. So it seems to me that Ron DeSantis is just upset that, again, he was outmaneuvered, and this is his way of punishing them. Now, Disney does not appear to be sitting back. The CEO has already come out and said this is anti-business, this is anti-Florida, because Disney is planning on investing $12 billion, they say, over the next decade in Florida, creating 13,000 jobs in Florida. So how is this going to end for Ron DeSantis? One, I would think that Florida residents would be pretty mad that he's continuing to pick a fight with this huge corporation that hugely benefits the state. And two, if you're going to pick a fight, you got to at least fight well. And he didn't bother to have even one staff person oversee the board to see what was happening in plain sight. And now that they've outmaneuvered him, he's really abusing his power with this criminal investigation by looking into them. And so I think, like, at the end of the day here, Disney is going to end up on top, but at what cost? Hopefully the cost is to Ron DeSantis, that there should not be this interference with the freedom of speech and a validly legal actions that a private corporation can take.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.